Welcome to the Level Up with Josh Pratt podcast, where you're invited to learn from my remarkable guest and lead a purpose-driven life. Hey guys, welcome to the Level Up podcast with Josh Pratt. I am your host, Josh Pratt, and I've got two of my very favorite people on today's episode. That would be Brad and Sandy Harris coming at us live from Utah. Brad, Sandy, how are you guys doing today?
Great. How are things back on the East Coast?
Things are marvelous. Just got back from a trip from Tennessee. Did some holiday traditions, right? But we're happy to be back, and I'm stoked to have you guys on. I appreciate you guys taking time to hop on this call with us. So I'm going to just introduce you guys real quick to those that aren't familiar with who you are. So Brad and Sandy Harris, they have lived a life full of service, and they've got lots of opportunities and experiences that they've had that they can share and reflect on to help those of us that are here on this call or will be listening. And so essentially a little bit about Brad. Brad was, he worked for the Boy Scouts of America, and I'll let him expound a little bit more on that in a bit of his roles and his leadership there. And then he served, he taught at BYU. He was my professor there, actually, believe it or not, many moons ago. People said we looked alike, so I called him Brad, my dad, Harris. Let's see. And then him and Sandy have 6 children. Sandy did the heavy lifting there, right, Sandy? Of raising their 6 kiddos. And then just recently they returned home from, actually, before I get to that, they served at the Missionary Training Center in Provo, Utah for a number of years. They saw about over 1,000 missionaries come through while they were serving there. And we'll touch again on that and what that looked like for them. And then most recently, they returned from a mission where they were a senior couple here in the Baltimore, Maryland mission. And you guys were specifically targeting the young single adults. Is that right?
Yes.
Yeah. Serving. Yeah.
Targeting sounds so sinister.
Yeah, targeting sounds like a football, like, where are they? Gonna get them. No, yeah, they were serving them for sure. And so I guess in a really, really short nutshell version of mine and Brad's history, again, he was my teacher at BYU. And then his first Sunday in the mission, who do I see sitting in our church? None other than Elder and Sister Harris. So we were able to catch up and coincidentally, I was actually still am working with the young single adults in our area. So for those of you that aren't members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, don't just turn off the podcast here. Listen, because what we want to do is we're going to dive into how you can help raise your children into, successful young adults and moving into adulthood. And, that ranges from little kids, under 8 years old, all the way up to, again, like 18, 19 and beyond. Brad and Sandy, what did I miss there? I'm sure I missed a lot of stuff, but do you guys want to touch a little bit more on like your history with the BSA or BYU or Sandy parenting and the MTC or mission? We'll get into a lot of it in a bit, but how about some of the roles you guys had and what
quick background. I was raised in the state of Oregon. She was raised in the state of California. We met at a college in Idaho. I served an LDS mission. I came home and there was Sister Harris, and we dated and married and went to school at Brigham Young University. Then I worked for the Boy Scouts of America. 6 kids, 14 grandkids. She has a degree in elementary education. And I retired 2021 from BYU. And as you said, we served a mission in Maryland. And then we're now serving a service mission with BYU Pathway.
That's right. Sandy, anything to add on to that?
That pretty well sums it up.
Okay, good.
We've lived in Oregon, California, Colorado, Texas, and in Maryland.
All right, Brad, what about some of the leadership or the roles you had at BSA, Boy Scouts of America?
Boy Scouts of America was a wonderful career for 22 years. As an executive, as a full-time, most people don't realize that behind the scenes, there's full-time people. There's about 1,000 volunteers to every one of us. And so right out of college, I accepted a job offer in Corvallis, Oregon, in 3 years, helped raise money, recruit kids, run summer camps, train leaders. The scouting program has the methods and the skill sets that help, I think, if properly applied, make a difference and change the lives of young men and young women. And then we moved on to California with a promotion, lived in the Bay Area for 3 years. That was kind of a culture shock coming from rural Oregon to urban California, and then to Colorado. I served my mission in Colorado, so it was good to go back to the mission field, and we were there for 6 years. And the highlights there was Camp Chris Dobbins, and it was state-of-the-art scout camp. Worked in Arapahoe and Valley districts, had a wonderful time, and just watching the difference that scouting, if properly applied, makes in the lives of the next generation.
Yeah.
Is a career that I could go to bed every night and look in the mirror and say, today, either directly or indirectly, I made a difference in the world.
Yeah.
Then I went back to Eugene in a leadership capacity, supervising other people. And then my career took a different view. I went to the national office in Dallas, the National BSA office, for 5 years, and helped create a new program for boys and girls ages 14 to 20 throughout the country. That's where I got used to being in the airplane and in the motel room and the rental car. And then changed careers in 1998, came to BYU in 2003. 2003 came to BYU and moved to Utah. And I was a professor in what was originally recreation management. And that's where I met Josh. One of my best students was Josh.
Oh,
He just sat there so entranced at everything that was going on in full attention mode.
Yeah.
Josh. Yeah.
Very studious, no doubt about it. I mean, I did not want to miss a class, did not want to miss anything.
And our program evolved then into experience design and management. When I retired, it was kind of the fashionable major on campus, very large private university, Brigham Young University. Had a wonderful time there, great students. Retired in 2021.
All right. I have to say one thing in case my kids watch this someday. Throughout my entire college career, I got all A's, all B's, and 1 C+. And that's it. I did have to take, I tested out of stats. So I actually got a C+ in stats. And then I ended up going to test again to get into this master's of social work program. And I tested out of it. So I ended up, surpassing that C+, but I still have another C+ on my record. Anyway, we won't talk about Family Recreation 301 or whatever it was. I'm just kidding. Actually, she was a lovely teacher. What was her name? Do you remember?
She was an adjunct. I don't remember her name.
Okay. She was sweet. Yeah. By the time I was at BYU though, and in my major, I was just like, I'm just going to graduate, get out of here, go do some small business stuff. And my goal was always to graduate from BYU. Anyway, cool. Well, I appreciate that. So again, just to kind of set the table for those listening, we're going to dive into, parenting hacks, if you will, or methods. And Sandy, we're going to rely heavily on you on this one because we know Brad was living out of a rental car and hotels and on airplanes while you were parenting your 6 kids. But no, okay. So Brad and Sandy wrote a book and it's called Raising Successful Missionaries. They didn't know I was going to introduce it here, but you can't even find it on Amazon right now, but you can get it on Kindle. I looked this morning. So again, if you're not LDS, you're not sending a kid on a mission like we do in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. However, in their book, there's so many lessons and there's such a big spillover and ripple effect, I guess you could say, of the principles you guys teach in the book. So maybe if you will, address our audience and kind of say, hey, this is what we found and this is maybe what our book's about, but this is how it can apply to both LDS and non-LDS people that are raising littles.
Okay, so the Missionary Training Center is in Provo, Utah. There's other MTCs around the country, but it's the big one, and there's probably 3,000 or 4,000 missionaries there at any one time. Missionaries serve voluntarily; they pay their own way, and there's 60,000 of them throughout the country. So they require a
Throughout
army
the world, right?
throughout the world. Yeah. So an army of volunteers. So we were volunteers asked to help. They put them into branches of 10 to 30 missionaries. And here you had people right off the plane. For some of them, their first time away from home in almost a boot camp scenario. I mean, they could get up and leave if they needed. There was no problems if they left, but very intense, learning the gospel, learning how to teach and how to preach. And we had 2,800 missionaries come through our branch in the 5 years we were there.
Wow.
And noticed certain tendencies of prepared missionaries and less prepared missionaries. And at some point into it, probably 2 years, we thought, parents don't get the full scoop of what goes on in the MTC. And if parents knew some things that could prepare their children, not just for mission, but for adulthood, maybe we should help them. So we wrote the book to kind of help parents, especially parents with younger children. What can we do now to prepare our kids to be adults?
And I think one of the main things that they learn at the MTC and on their mission is to get over themselves, to look outward more, and to find the joy in that and the fulfillment in that. And so every child has a purpose in life, a mission, and so preparing them for their mission and their purpose involves, I believe, helping them to be self-sufficient and outward, others focused.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you. And I think you stated that really well, where some people that might be listening to this might have kids that are preparing and they're trying to help them prepare for a mission. And then you've got other people that are going to be listening to this that, their kids are just going through high school and they're doing their sports and their hobbies and they'll be going away to college soon and things like that. So, how about we dive into a little bit about that? Like what parents can do if let's say they got children, under 8 years old and then between 8 and 17, and then what it looks like as they progress onto adulthood. So how about we start there, like with under 8 years old?
Okay. You want to start with that?
Yeah, we went to in the church, we have a song, I am a child of God, and he has sent me here, has given me an earthly home with parents kind and dear. And then the chorus says, lead me, guide me, walk beside me, help me find the way. And so we went to a meeting once where the woman there talked about the 3 different phases that children have. There's the lead me phase, and that's like from birth to about age 8. And, studies have shown that about age 8 is when kids are accountable for their own actions, And so from birth to 8, we provide for their needs and we teach them and we work alongside them, hopefully joyfully. You don't just tell a 3-year-old, go clean the bathroom.
Yeah.
You'd make a game of it. You'd go and show them how it's done, and they do their little part and you applaud it and that kind of thing. You also need to model what you need to see. If you want your children to be obedient, you need to model obedience to the authority figures in your life and to the things that you want them to adhere to. You need to speak respectfully about other people if you want them to do that. Kids watch. It's, children between age 2 and 5, most of their value system and their perspective on life is pretty well established then by watching the adults in their lives. And then anyway, ages 8 to 17 is the guide me phase. And that's when you turn things over to them more. You let them clean the bathroom and try not to be too harsh on them, but, give them guidelines, make sure that they do a job that they can be proud of and that they know that they're developing competence in doing something. Help them to use their skills to serve other people, to work on projects together, to help your neighbors, to help other people that you see that could use your help, to make their own appointments sometimes, to handle their own problems instead of storming into the school because your child has a problem with the teacher. The first line of defense is to help your child process it and say, oh, have you tried talking with the teacher? Have you tried this? And
Yeah.
let them solve some of their own problems. If you need to intervene, you can, but as much as possible, try and teach them to be competent and confident in their abilities.
Yeah.
So then by age 18, you have the walk beside me phase where you're working with them and they have learned to be competent. The spiritual aspect too, I think, is teaching them from an early age to turn to a higher source than themselves, a higher source than us, for their guidance and for their comfort and for their strength. And that would be in prayer, in studying the scriptures, and that kind of thing, where they can know the source that they can turn to.
Yeah. And that might be one thing that's a little bit different from maybe the secular versus the non-secular, is where you've got people that hopefully if you've done your job as a parent, and you're a believer, that you've helped your kids develop that relationship with God. But maybe if they're non-believers, like it's a different method, it's a different approach. But it could have similar results. And that is like, hey, if you're a parent of a child, it's like, hey, tell your child to, listen to their body, how are they feeling inside? What are their emotions? What, and take that moment to just have a timeout and reset and ponder and be still and get rid of distractions, things like that.
Yeah. I
really like what you had mentioned though, the lead me, guide me, and then walk beside me. I think, it really illustrates it very nicely. And especially, I think one thing we don't do terribly well in the States, and I don't know exactly, the reason for it, but I feel like we enable quite a bit, and kids have a hard time launching. I know my wife and I chat regularly, and, I love my parents dearly. I love her parents dearly, but we always kind of say we wish our parents had pushed us a little harder. And so now we're trying to implement some of that, but not too much of that mindset into our parenting with our little kiddos.
Yeah, I think it's interesting that there are two extremes. Extremes are always dangerous, I think. The one extreme is where you coddle your children and do everything for them, and that that handicaps them as they get older. Another extreme is you coerce them, you force them to do things, and that also is damaging, because then they don't have a good attitude towards doing things for themselves.
Well, and missionaries that struggled at the MTC had either been coddled, and you could tell within a couple of days they'd either been coddled or coerced. Those in the middle seemed to do while we were there. We were interested because there was several of the branch presidents along with us were returned mission presidents. People who had spent 3 years, 24/7 working with missionaries. So during our time there, we sat down with 19 of them, mission presidents, and asked them, what are the characteristics of a successful missionary? And then we just kept track of what they said. Individual interviews. And some things rose to the top very, very quickly. Would you like to know what they are?
Please, let's hear it.
Yeah. Okay. It goes along with what she said. There was 4 things. Number 1, they know how to work hard. Every one of the 19 mission presidents in an independent interview, and asked, what are the characteristics of a successful missionary, said they have to have a work ethic. We were a little surprised. We thought they'd say, a testimony in the church or Book of Mormon. There's no question. It was, one person said, Idaho farm boy. You don't have to be from Idaho, but they know how to work hard was number 1. Number 2 is they've made obedience a personal quest. So they're used to being obedient, and they strive to be obedient in addition to working hard. Number 3, and this is in order of responses, was they are good communicators. This was done before the pandemic. And since the pandemic, we've tended to retreat, become more hermits, and less communicative. So I think that's really an important one. And then the last one was the one we expected, to have a testimony of the Book of Mormon and the gospel.
Yeah.
So work hard is number 1. And then while we were there, we interviewed the president of the MTC, who dealt with any issue that somebody wanted to go home, or if there was a problem. He got all the troubled missionaries, and it wasn't that many, but he knew some of that. So he said, what would you wish for all missionaries before entering the MTC? And he didn't know what we'd done with the other interviews. He said, number one, I wish every missionary had a significant away from home experience before their mission.
Yeah.
He said, what do you mean by that? He says, well, go off to the summer and work on a farm at your uncle's farm. Go to a semester of college, scout camp. It's only a week, but get them away from home as often as possible. Because for way too many missionaries, their first 3 days in the MTC was traumatic.
Yeah.
Traumatic. Away from home and doing things they'd never done before.
I'm laughing because, I wouldn't say my first few days in the MTC were that difficult, but yeah, you get there, you're just to kind of, again, paint a picture here for those that aren't members of our church. You're having missionaries, young men, young women that are at my time, just 18, 19 years old. They're flying in from all over the world. They're at this new campus with just a few thousand people. They just said goodbye to their parents, their girlfriend, boyfriend, whatever. And now you're in a situation where nobody knows you. Like, that could be exhilarating for some people because it's like, oh, nobody knows me. It's a fresh start. And it can be scary for other people who are like maybe a big fish in a little pond and thinking, oh, they don't know how great I am. Or and then those weren't really an issue for me. But I think for me, it's just like, 2 years, like that's a long time. So, but anyway, please.
Well, and looking back, my parents didn't know this, but I spent a whole year away at college before my mission. And I remember feeling homesick as 800 miles away from home. I couldn't go home. I had to put up with it for that first semester at college. And I got over homesickness. I came home for Christmas, having been away from home for 3 months. I was like, yeah, I don't need to be home anymore. I'm now an adult. And I'm glad that didn't happen on my mission. That happened before the mission. I was not homesick on my mission.
Yeah.
And so the last thing after, these three things, the mission president said, a significant away from home experience, number one. Number two, work ethic. There's work again. And number three, leadership opportunities that they wish every missionary had before they came to the MTC.
Yeah. So I guess, what would you recommend? You kind of outline these things for missionaries, but maybe for those that aren't members of our church and they're parenting, how do they, help their children level up so they're prepared when it comes time for them to depart for college?
Learn to do hard things. Stretch your comfort zone.
Yeah, that's one thing that we have taught when we've gone and done speaking engagements and stuff is everybody, you have your comfort zone, and for Brad, it might be going out and doing something physical, exercise, sports, something like that. For me, my comfort zone would be baking some cookies and watching a movie.
That sounds good.
And so, but every time you do go a little bit out of your comfort zone, if someone calls and they need something that I can help with, it's kind of like, well, this weekend this happened. We had relatives come from out of town, and we thought they were just going to be staying overnight, but turned out they were interested in getting together, which was wonderful because we love them. But I was stressed. I was thinking, oh dear, what am I going to feed them? And what are they going to do? And is everybody going to have a good time? And, but it went outside of my comfort zone. I said, yeah, come on over. So it all worked out, the food worked out and the people, the kids playing ghosts in the graveyard in the backyard. The weather was fine. Everything turned out really wonderful. And it was a good connection with them. But what if I wouldn't have gone out of my comfort zone?
Yeah, never.
What if I said, oh, no, I don't think we can do that. But every time you go out of your comfort zone, it expands. So now, I'm not going to be as reticent about that. I'm going to say, oh, it worked out last time. It'll all work out. And after a while, you do that enough and you carry your comfort with you. You're not afraid of doing new things or hard things.
So fewer things stress you out. Fewer things will bring anxiety. If your comfort zone is stretching, then you're more capable of handling more things. But we see too often parents doing everything they can to minimize things that happen to their kids and jumping in front of the path and trying to clean everything up in advance. And it does not prepare them for adulthood.
Yeah.
Really
You know,
the same.
no, I agree. And, I'm thinking here as a parent of a small children, it's like, we kind of push them towards things that they're good at, right? Like, our kids love soccer and they're excelling at soccer. They're doing well. And there is challenges within practice and games and coaches and teammates and stuff like that. But, as you guys are talking, I'm thinking to myself, I should probably do a better job of putting my kids in situations that they're not very good at. Like cleaning the house, no, I'm just kidding. They actually are pretty good at that. Don't tell them I said that though. Uh, No, so I'm just kind of thinking out loud here that, maybe I have a teenager that's an athlete. Like I might want to get them involved or expose them to a circumstance. Maybe it's like, maybe it's like a coding thing, like a coding class, something that's not really up there, in their wheelhouse, right? Or, maybe if it's not athletics, maybe it's, some sort of camp, Bible camp, if that's maybe they're not super spiritually aware or astute. I don't know, I'm just kind of thinking, but I think any parent can kind of see what their kids' strengths are. They can hopefully kind of expose them to some other things like working at Uncle's Ranch or going and volunteering at the soup kitchen or going to the nursing home. And I mean, those are just a couple I'm just kind of thrown off the top of my head here.
I think those things happen naturally, that situations come up and opportunities come up, and just to not act upon your fears, just teaching them to go out and seek the adventure and give it their best shot.
Well, in simple and little things, what efforts do we make every time we go shopping to find the closest parking place to the front door?
Oh, yeah. Right?
So park at the furthest place you can and walk. It's good for your heart. You're not stressed out. And I tried this for the last 5 years. I worked at BYU. My office was on the 4th floor. So I would drive my car, park in the furthest place I possibly could next to the Tanner building, my little white truck, and I would walk through the lobby and walk up the 4 lengths of stairs every day and back. And I just got used to it. And there's sometimes my car was the only one in the furthest parking lot. But I liked the exercise that I got, and purposely doing hard things. It's what we called in our book planned privations.
It makes me think of, two things. People see your truck there off in the distance. They're like, wow, that guy just doesn't want his car truck hit. Ding.
It's a 2003 Ford Ranger with dents in it. Go ahead, hit my car.
He loves that Ford Ranger. And then it also makes me think of President Hinckley, right? Like how he used to take the steps. I think, in the temple in Salt Lake. And one of the other brethren who was younger had taken the elevator, and he sees President Hinckley, like, at 90 plus years old, walking the steps. Just yesterday, we were at our hotel in Tennessee, and Parker's like, I wish we could take the elevator. I'm like, no, we're going to take the steps. It's easy. It's good exercise. And yeah, anyway, no, I love that planned privation. I think if parents, even if it's like pausing from screen time, which I'm such a big advocate for, and having them put, one thing we do in our house is like the little ones, like, can you put the utensils away? Just like I know you kind of talk about in your book is giving your kids, little tasks.
Chores.
Yes. Age appropriate chores. Okay, cool. So we kind of talked about the lead me, the guide me. We talked about that.
Hey, can I say one more thing?
Yeah.
Something about the age appropriate chores is it gives them a sense of confidence and of pride. And one thing that I would say a lot is, I don't know what I would do without you. They're a contributing member of the family. They're not just these little leeches.
Yeah. One thing I've heard recently is that kids really love high fives, so whatever it is about high fives, we actually do a good amount of high fives in our family with our little kids. So they love it. And, so maybe if a parent's listening and they've got little ones, you can do a little Google research on what it is about high fives that kids love so much. We always tell our kid, one thing we've also been doing with our kids, right, for the last while now is we will cuddle with them before we go to bed. And there's going to come a time where they grow out of that, but it's giving them opportunities to just talk to us, at the end of the day. it's not every single day, but it's a lot of days because we got a bunch of kids. And anyway, it gives just everyone an opportunity to wind down. And as we've had some issues like with our preteen a little bit, nothing major, but we talk about, hey, we need more cuddle time, or we call it in our family huggles, and like one-on-one daddy-daughter dates or mother-son dates or vice versa. So, all right. What else?
One thing I taught at school that it just occurred to me that I think goes along with this, a researcher named Piaget, came up with the terms related to our children of accommodation and assimilation. When a child is doing something that they've done before and they're used to it, it's assimilating. That they're these figurative blocks in their head they can put something into. What he recommends is that we try to create, as parents, accommodating experiences, something new they've never done before. And they have to create a block in their head. Where does this go? Where am I going to fit this? So in the process, they create a new place in their head, going on a trip for the first time, or first time you ride a bike. Those are all accommodating experiences. It gets harder as you get older. For me, I have a hard time finding and accommodating experiences, which is fine. Like doing things that you've never done before. And then as we stretch our mind and create more blocks of knowledge in our head, then we become able to assimilate more.
Okay, I appreciate that. And as you're kind of talking about that, we talked about high fives. You guys are listening. You're paying attention. It's a quote here. It's from, you'll know this quote: "God is much more concerned with our growth than with our comfort." That's one. And then the other one I wanted to share was from Angela Duckworth. It says, "I worry about people who cruise through life friction-free for a long, long time before encountering their first real failure. They have so little practice falling and getting up again. I call them the fragile perfects. They have learned how to succeed, but not how to fail."
Well, and that's, I didn't know you were going to say that, but I happen to have this book here with me. This is Angela Duckworth, Grit, a great author, award-winning book that she started off by researching West Point entries, people who have been entered into West Point Military Academy. And she studied those who couldn't make it and those that did. And turned out that it turns into passion, the power of passion and perseverance. And she goes through all kinds of wonderful, helpful hints about how we teach perseverance in our children.
Okay, well, let me pass this over to Sandy here. Sandy, how do you feel like you do teach perseverance in how you did it with your kids? Maybe, clearly before this book came along, and maybe some stories you might be able to share where you were able to see your kids be resilient or teach resiliency.
There's times we think of when we could have been better at that.
I think more of those times probably. Well, I know I think of our kids' personalities and just bringing out what they had to offer. Our daughter was a very determined person, and she was a very resilient person. And she kind of naturally just aspired she wanted to be the best. She wanted to do the best. She worked really hard to make things happen. When in her high school, they had, there was lettering. People could letter in sports. Mm-hmm. Well, she thought they ought to be able to letter in music too. So she went and made that happen. She went to the orchestra teacher and he said, "I don't have time for that. Write something up and I'll approve it." And she made a lettering program for them to letter in music in their school. So, she did things like that. And I just kind of stood by in awe and accommodated her. We had children also that dealt with some really difficulties in, Tourette's syndrome and having OCD and ADD kind of tendencies. And I think one thing that we taught them is, I realize this is difficult for you, particularly for you, this is a hard thing, but you're still accountable for how you treat other people. And so if you need help, it's your responsibility to ask and, try and teach them that accountability, but also with a lot of support. One thing we saw a graph one time that said, on one side was support and on the other side was expectations. And you need to have a good balance of those.
Sure.
You can't have high expectations without any support, but high expectations and high support, help them.
I like that a lot. I'm always talking about managing expectations with my kids and with my wife and my relationships, my clients. It's always about managing expectations. Brad, it looked like, did you have something you wanted to say there? You were kind of thinking.
Well, I was just thinking about, we tried to go on a lot of hikes as a kid, as with our kids. And when you hike, you're real excited at first, but then at some point you get tired and you want to go back. And we would always say, well, we got to go around the next corner. We need to let's see what's around the next corner. And you push them, not to the point where they're going to get hurt, but you push them and you persevere. Yeah. Or when we lived in Colorado, we tried to climb as many of the 14ers as possible. I mean, there's 52 of them. I think we only climbed 4 or 5 of them, but the altitude, and park your car 10,000 feet and walk up to 14,000 feet with my boys. And I wish I'd have done more of that. But some of my favorite memories were standing on the top of a peak with my 10-year-old son, looking where we'd just been, and then putting our feet in the cold creek on the way back. I mean, I'll never forget that, versus sitting at home doing something else.
100%. I mean, you and I, we are very much alike in that regards. Yeah, I mean, we've tried to do that. I think if there's some people that are listening right now, I think camping is a great way to kind of have planned privation, right? Like you're having to set up your shelter that night, your tent and your bedding, and maybe you're sleeping on a little mattress that isn't super comfortable, and you're cooking your own food over the fire. Everybody wakes up and they talk about how poorly they slept, You
told us a story about a conversation you had with your son about that.
That's right. I forgot about that.
I love that story.
We've told that to many people.
Okay, I got to share it then. That's right. Okay, so this was, I guess, like 2 summers ago. Parker was about 5 years old, and we're camping, and we're at Greenbrier State Park in Washington County, Maryland. Anyway, so we're there, and Parker's just like not really helping clean up, as we're taking down camp and everything. And I'm like, I look at him like square in the eyes. I'm like, Parker, you have to work hard. Like, you need to help. This is hard work. It's going to be hard work the rest of your day. Or what did I say? Hard work every day, the rest of your life. Right. You got him gripped. And then he just has this awful like cry with like tears coming down his face. He's like, are you for real? It's just like, yeah. So I think at that moment, he just thought the rest of his life was going to be horrendous. But to his credit, Parker, my wife and I have said this to each other and to him privately, that he, that was 2 years ago, but even recently, he's just still taking leaps and bounds, helping bring luggage down to the car as we're on vacation, and packing up, and, helping to clean up and listening the first time, all these different things. So
since that day, his trajectory has changed. Once you realize that life is going to be hard, and there'll be hard things every day, I might as well get used to it, versus ease and comfort.
It was a little bit of a shock, but he dealt with it. He got through it. And so,
yeah, it used to be, anytime we asked him to clean up, he'd be like, I'm hungry, I'm tired, I got to go to the bathroom. And then it's just like, my wife's sweet and merciful, and I'm just like, come on, let's go, Parker. Anyway, but no, he's doing great. And, I attribute a lot of that to his own hard work and getting after it. So, all right. So we talked about a comfort zone. We talked about that quote from Angela Duckworth. We're running a little bit out of time. I don't want to take too much of your guys' time. I really appreciate you guys, but we can go any direction you want with this. If there's anything else you want to discuss on parenting, we can. But also, I'd like to discuss BYU Pathways next, if you wouldn't mind.
Okay. Well, before BYU Pathways, I just want to bring up one more thing from an oldie but goodie book called The Intentional Family.
Okay.
A researcher, I believe in Minnesota, studied families, and he came up with two versions: intentional family versus an entropic family. I never heard the word entropic before, but entropic is the tendency of the physical system to lose energy and coherence over time. So he said from his office in Minneapolis, he can see the Mississippi River. And we've been to Mississippi River, and many people haven't. It's gigantic river, but it's just slow moving. You can barely tell it's a river. So he says, using an analogy, if you get in a canoe in the Mississippi River, a intentional family would be paddling. Even though you don't see the current, there's a steady current of negative things, of the world, of things that come at you. An entropic family stops pedaling. The canoe turns sideways. And if they don't get back on track, they'll find themselves down in New Orleans 3 months later. I mean, that's where it ends.
Yeah.
And so he uses the analogy of rituals, family rituals that we should be doing regularly to keep us as an intentional family, not just haphazard, fall around or do whatever comes natural, but to have intentional things that we do that keep the family together. Otherwise, we become the entropic family. That's something that I've never forgotten.
A quote I learned in the MTC, actually, oddly enough, was when you're green, you grow, and when you're ripe, you rot. And I think that's that right there, right? Like if you're paddling and you're trying to learn and grow, right? With the quote I shared, you're making moves, you're going places. Whereas if you're just like hanging out, it's just that's when you rot.
Well, in some families, only one person's doing the paddling.
And
if you've been in a canoe, to keep that canoe going straight, you got to learn the J stroke, and it's not easy. If everybody else is just sitting around and one person's doing the paddling, that is an entropic family.
Okay, so what are some rituals that you guys do or you recommend families do as they are trying to prepare their child for their mission, whether it's
families need traditions. I really feel strongly about
and
that.
Children love traditions.
Yeah. And whether sometimes it's small, simple things like your high fives, like your, snuggle time at night, time reading together is one. Holiday traditions where you do the same things each year and they look forward to it.
Yeah.
Even things they don't look forward to. They, as they get older, it's a real bonding thing. They laugh about, remember when we did this all the time,
Yeah.
Saturday morning chores.
With Taco Tuesdays. So, yes. Okay, so we're going to go Tuesday and get tacos. Our 2-year-old grandson, when he comes over, he has to knock on the door and say knock, knock, knock before we open the door.
If we open the door too soon, he gets upset.
No, I got to say knock. And so, I mean, children love things that are predictable and things that they can look forward to. On Friday night, our family does this. And I think the biggest thing he comes up with in this book is eating dinner tonight as a family.
Yeah. Oh,
we've gotten away from as a country, but he goes through the benefits that they've studied academically of families getting together at least for dinner at night.
Yeah, there needs to be balance in your life and there needs to be connection. And so if, dinner time is ideal because it goes psychologically back to, when they're a baby and they receive nourishment from their parent, right? And even when you're older, breaking bread together, eating together and opening up that communication about your day, about how things went.
Yeah. And you know what? I think there's probably a lot of reasons why the United States and maybe many parts of the world are kind of veering off and from, the traditional dinner time, and probably youth sports is a huge thing and other activities, not just sports, but, yeah, I mean, as we're kind of talking about these traditions, like if you say, okay, if a kid has a rough day at school, if they can have that mindset, well, at least at 5:30, I'm going to sit down with my parents who I know love me and my little siblings that look up to me or my big siblings that I look up to, and can say, hey, this kid was mean to me at school today and I just didn't think it was right, or whatever it is. Yeah, we need to be better about that in our own home. It's kind of a zoo in the evening, but, we we do our best. And but that's something we could definitely do better in. Yeah. Other rituals, could be church each week, right? I don't even care if it's our church. If someone's going to church each week, what you're telling your kids or a place of worship is that you're going to go with like-minded people that are trying to build their relationship with God. And also, sometimes my kids will be like, oh, I don't want to go to church today. It's like, well, it's not all about you, right? Like we're going to be a help for the other family that may be struggling, or the kid in your class that doesn't have very many friends at school.
Yeah. That sense of community, that's one thing I admire about the Pratts, is that you get out there and you expand your circle. You invite other people into your home, you get involved with the community, and your kids have that sense of a world beyond their little room.
Well, we just like to have fun. That's mainly it. And the times where we're having the most fun is when we've got our dear friends and family and strangers that we just met over for dinner and stuff like that. I was just thinking I might just list off a few rituals that we do in our family. So it might be helpful for someone that's, and maybe you guys will do the same. And after I'm done. All right. So I'm just kind of going through the beginning of the year. So there's typically a Super Bowl party. Most people do that with all sorts of loads of food. The last weekend in February, we go up to Amish country, and we see there's like an auction that we go to, and we eat yummy food there, and we see the horses, and we'll go to the different markets. When we have like church online, general conference, we'll make some of the same dishes. I know you do this too. This is a big thing in our culture is cinnamon rolls, right? Or are you laughing because there's a naked baby running behind here?
Your son is walking past.
So
Here we
cute.
go.
Yes.
You get the rest of my office here. What else? So I'm just kind of going through the year. The last couple of years, we've done a massive road trip. So, and then
vacations.
Oh, so many memories from vacations.
I talk with some individuals that they just get so busy with work, right? We're like, oh, I can't get time off. Like it doesn't need to be anything grandiose. Like even if it's an overnight camp out, right? We do this Halloween party every year. Family reunions is another great ritual. We've been to a few of those these last few years. And then we just got back from Dollywood, like I was saying, in Tennessee. And you're talking about holiday traditions. It's brutal, right? Like because we're leaving at like 2:30 in the morning. Oh, he actually has clothes on. That's great. But we're leaving and we've got like a 7-hour drive ahead of us. This last time we actually hit a deer. So that was on Thursday morning, bright and early. Well, I should say we collided. Like we were going straight. I swerved and it hit us, I guess. Anyway, but yeah, these things, like, although it's kind of tragic in the moment, they say tragedy plus time equals humor. So it could be an awful situation where it's like, oh, my date picked me up and I wasn't ready and mom told him I was in the bathroom or whatever. So yeah, it's tragic. But then years go by and it's like, oh, remember I had such a crush on so-and-so and mom told him I was in the bathroom. It's just like, you get over it. Tragedy plus time equals humor. So anyway, I kind of mentioned a couple of our rituals. What are some other rituals that maybe you guys did in your family that, and I guess some of those were more like trip related. We also do like a Halloween party that's there. What about you guys? What were some things that you do or have done?
Well, when the kids were little, and I had an evening meeting, and I would come home, and the kids are ready for bed, and she'd say, "Go put the kids to bed." Sometimes, and I would go lay there, and they want me to tell them a story, and so I'd just make up something. I think it was Jed Smith or something, and I would just start from scratch, and I'd always leave it cliffhanging. Like, the bear there was these steps in the woods, and they, Dad, and I said, no, wait till tomorrow night. So I had to do part 2 the next night, and once in a while, when we're together, 30 years later, they talk about the Jed Smith stories. I don't even remember what I said.
Yeah.
But just spending time alone, doing something important with your kid.
Or they'd ask for stories about when we were their age.
Yeah.
Tell stories from our lives.
Yeah.
Dr. Doherty has a chapter on family meals, rising and retiring, coming and going out and going away, couple rituals. And then he has a whole chapter on Thanksgiving, on Christmas, and special, Mother's Day, Father's Day stuff.
This is the book you just,
Family, or The Intentional Family. Yeah.
Cool. I'm gonna have to get that. Sorry.
Another thing we always did was having family prayer at night before we went to bed, and we'd all get in a circle and take turns saying the prayer. And then afterwards, our oldest daughter started this tradition when she was a baby. She would say, we'd have prayer and then we'd hug, and she'd say, ooh, ah. And so she thought that after amen, there was an ooh, ah every time,
That's cute.
So we still do that today, 40 years later. When we hug, we go, the whole family, we've had 20 of us leaning together, family prayer, and we go, ooh, ah, as we hug each other.
Now, everyone watching this is like, wow, the Harrises are really weird.
So one time we went to church and she was done. She was ready to be done with church. She was ready to go to nursery. And the guy that was saying the prayer was saying kind of a long prayer. And so our little girl started saying, amen, amen, ooh, ah, amen, ooh, ah.
That's cute.
At the end of the prayer, she thought he would hear her and then stop his prayer again. Just little things. And the kids usually are the ones who keep it going.
Yeah.
The traditions.
Yeah. There's so many ways, and I think it's going to be so different for each family, right? Like how they can make it more meaningful and impactful for their own family. So like we always say like, hey, what are you grateful for? We have a what are you grateful for song. It's like, what are you grateful for? What are you grateful for? What are you grateful for? And then Kendall or whoever, like, I'm thankful for you, mommy, or So, but then it goes deeper, and we have like a gratitude list and stuff like that. Okay. So I just want to touch on two other things, then we'll go to BYU Pathways and we can wrap up because I want to be mindful of your time. You talked about significant out-of-home experiences and going outside your comfort zone. I actually just did something like this. I was just in Costa Rica, and I went down there with a bunch of people that I didn't know. Like I wanted to do this leadership training, and I wanted to do this realtor mastermind workshop, and we ended up opening it up to individuals, and I ended up going down there, leaving my wife and kids, which that wasn't, for some guys that'd probably be super exciting and they'd look forward to it. I wasn't really looking forward to it. But I went outside my comfort zone and I did this activity, and I met phenomenal people, incredible people in their own spaces of hospitality, music, what else? Eye surgeon, all these different people. And, coming home out of that experience, I feel more centered. I feel like there's less distractions. I feel closer to my wife. I feel like I've got a stronger relationship with God. So, I think if I'm a teen and I go through something like that, I'm coming out of it, ready to take on the world. And so this upcoming summer, I am planning on going down to Costa Rica with a group of young teenagers and teaching them leadership training. So I love that you said that, significant out-of-home experiences. And you got that, Brad. Sandy, did you do anything like that before you married this guy, or was that kind of...
Went away to college.
Yeah. I went away my sister had a lot of children, and I would go and stay with her and help out when she had a baby. And so, there was some getting away and doing things.
Well, and we're familiar with an organization, very successful. People sign up and they take kids to third world countries, build a home. They're there for 3 weeks.
Yeah.
We were chaperones for one of those in Cancun, or not Cancun, in Belize. And we saw over a period of 24 hours, children changing. Most of them were from upper class, middle class homes. Some they didn't know how to use a hammer or a nail. Here we are out in the sweltering heat. All the stuff we talked about with missionaries, hard work, doing hard things, watching them think of other people. We had dinner at a person's house that couldn't afford to feed us, but they did anyway. We were worried about the water. We played a little bit, but in 3 weeks, these 25 high school kids went home different.
Yeah. Wow. 3 weeks. That's a long time.
3 weeks is not a very long time for changing somebody's life. We saw it in the MTC. We saw people in 48 hours in the MTC go from the world revolves around me to my purpose is to help other people.
Yeah. I read that in your book. I love that. That's exciting. Yeah. And I guess for us as members of the church, we know the power that can come from, and not just our church, there's other churches out there that are doing tremendous good, right? Where you're connected with other people. And like the scriptures say, where two or more are gathered in my name, there will I be also. Yeah, that's really cool. Okay. So, I don't think we need to touch on it too much because we kind of discussed all the different things that make these young people, ready for the next threshold, right? Like the next big stage, next big event of their life. Is there anything that you guys saw? I'm sure there was, but maybe if you want to touch on it real quick, some of the missionaries that went home early, like they got there within a day or two. What were some of and again, we kind of talked about things that made some successful and some that weren't.
Yeah,
What do you think?
they had addictions.
Video games.
Gamers, yeah, gamers who had not gotten that in its balance, in its place in their life, who hadn't gotten that under control, and then in fact, they'd do it more. They'd stay up all night the night before they went to the MTC, playing their games and stuff, and then they go and they didn't realize
cold turkey.
Yeah, they didn't realize how addicted they were to it, and they had a really hard time.
Yeah, the last mission president we worked with over the MTC said every person that went home had been a gamer.
Yeah. Interesting.
Not that you can't play games, but you got to have balance in your life.
Yeah.
It brings up the media, which we could do a whole nother thing just on the cell phone and how this has changed our children, and if we're not careful, can run our families' lives.
Yeah, totally.
That's one thing our kids. That's one thing our kids remember about Brad. He always says, "It's a tool, not a toy."
That's great. Yeah. Oh, that's good. And then I got to mention this because I think of you guys when we're doing this, like with our kids. We'll ask them if they want something, that they can go to the counter at the store and order whatever it is they want off the menu because they have money, instead of just like being like this little insignificant child. No, it's like they've got significance, they've got the tools. So go up and order, pay for it. Another thing I like to have them do is I love having them look at someone in the eyes and say, "Hey, how was your day?" Instead of just like when grandma and grandpa come, give them a hug. It's like, look at them, talk to them, and actually converse with them. Because I think as a society, our little kids are having a really hard time with that. And the pandemic definitely did not help that.
Yeah.
We were out to a Kentucky Fried Chicken with our 10-year-old grandson the other day, and he wanted honey to go on his muffin. And I said, "Well, go up and ask the person." He goes, "No, Grandpa, you do that." And I said, "No, you're old enough. You go do it." It took forever to get him up there to do that. So 3 times since then, we've had a similar situation. He said, "Grandpa, is this the honey thing?" I said, "Yes."
Honey thing.
This is the honey thing. You do the talking. I'm going to stand back here and you can talk with adults.
They're lucky. They're lucky to have you guys as grandparents. No doubt about it. I love that. Okay. So, BYU Pathways, what is it and how can it change the world?
Yes. So BYU Pathway Connect is the program that we're dealing with, that we're helping with. And it's a low cost, very low cost, no prerequisites, spiritually based path to higher education. And you can there's a support system, you have a mentor, you have a gathering group that you meet with for an hour a week. It's all online. You can do it on your own pace at your own time. So it's a good program. There are several degrees you can get, and there are certificates you get along the way that can help your employment. And
so people can actually get, an associate's or bachelor's degree from BYU Pathways.
Bachelor's degree in 3 years. And the tuition is prorated based on the country you're from. If you live in Ghana, it's $5 per credit.
Yeah.
If you live in the United States, it's $81 per credit. And that's just a fraction. And this is legitimate college. The professors are from BYU, Idaho. It's online. They have an institute class that they take in addition to that, where they get some spiritual training.
And there are scholarships available to everyone who applies.
And the leading countries right now of participants are the Philippines, Ghana, Peru, Mexico, and United States.
Yeah.
Exciting. It is anybody who has a desire and the need can do this. Because the Pathway Connect program, there are 3 7-week terms where you make sure that your math skills, your communication skills, your technology, your writing, all of that is up to par so that you can enroll for your classes.
The first 7 weeks is personal skills. The next week is professional skills. And the third 7 weeks is academic skills.
Yeah.
What degrees are they offering right now? What majors?
I have to get online, but there's 7 majors, 7 3 credit or 3-year majors. If you just go to byupathway.org. And then there's 29 certificates. One of them, we have people who want to do coding, people who want to do medical stuff. BYU certificates and degrees. Here we go. Affordable, employable.
And while you're looking at that, I'll just share, recently, I know Elder David A. Bednar was interviewed by the Jazz owner from the NBA, the Utah Jazz.
Yeah.
What's his name? Ryan Smith, is that right?
Ryan Smith, yeah.
Yeah, so he was interviewing Elder Bednar at the Silicon Slopes conference, and he was talking to him, and Elder Bednar is talking a little bit about BYU Pathways. And in this conversation, he's saying, like, look, there's over 4,000 languages, in Africa alone, with all the different dialects and stuff like that. And he's just saying that with BYU Pathways, if someone goes on there and starts engaging and taking these courses and getting these certificates, things like that, that these women in a lot of these countries who aren't, are typically put aside and don't ever have the chance to gain an education, he says, if they go on and they are able to learn how to read, then they're able to read, and then they're able to read the scriptures to their kids, and that education is just such a powerful vehicle that, Pathways is such a powerful vehicle for the world to gain further light and knowledge.
Yeah, there's a program called English Connect, which helps them learn English before they take BYU Pathway.
Yeah. So I can't think of any roadblock there would be that you can't overcome if you want to get a higher education.
The money's not a roadblock. Previous education is not a roadblock. It's just a matter of deciding to do it. So here's the degrees: applied business management, applied health, communication, family and human services, information technology, professional studies, and software development. There's 8 associate degrees. So they get an associate degree. And then there's 29 certificates. And by the time they graduate, they'll have 3 certificates. And these certificates are letters you can put behind your name that will help you immediately be more employable, even before you finish your degree.
Yeah, they have basic accounting, business administration, entrepreneurship, family services, graphic design, health program, medical billing and coding, project management, web and computer programming, lots of different certificates you can get.
Would you mind sharing a little bit about the onboarding process and just the ease of it all for somebody that's just getting started on that?
You can go to byupathway.org and you can find out, get an overview, find out all about it. You can chat with someone online about it. You can apply right from there.
I think January 8th is the next semester. We're in the middle of the semester right now, but once you sign up, then you pick an institute class time you want to do, and you have to pick a gathering time. Our gatherings are 9:15 Thursday morning, because that was convenient for these. We had 15 students from all different backgrounds. Average age is probably 33, and they have 2 or 3 kids, and they all have jobs. And this was a time when they're open. And so we meet with them every Thursday, and it's kind of like a support group. We facilitate the meetings, and then we turn the time over to them, and they talk about what they're learning in their classes.
Very good. Yeah, well, I think you were saying, Brad, when they get started, they're only taking one class for starters, right?
That's 1 3 credit class.
And then from there, is it get more heavy, or is it typically just every?
Yeah, after about the first 6 months, after you do your 3 7 week terms, then you get started on your actual courses, your coursework that you're taking.
And they call it the on-ramp. I love this analogy. We've all been on busy freeways and they can be scary and we're whipping along at 70 miles an hour, but this is the on-ramp to higher education. So you start slow and you speed up and then you have to merge with traffic. And before you know it, you're on the freeway of higher education.
And you have 2 times a week when you're actually signed up for a time period, your gathering group, the support group, and your institute, your religion class. And other than that, it's all online at your pace, at your time.
Yeah, there's not live professors teaching lectures. They're recorded. And you can do it at 3 o'clock in the morning.
And then assignments that you turn in.
Yeah.
And everybody also has a mentor that they can contact with any.
So a fun little story. It hasn't worked out quite yet, but I was I was getting legitimately trying. There was a scammer trying to scam me. They were just messaging me saying, "Hey, send me these gift card." I can't remember what it was, but they wanted like these Steam gift cards, is what they're called, and I just kept messing with this guy because I had nothing better to do at the moment. Anyway, long story short, I just told the guys, like, look, I know you're a fraud. Like, this is not going to work out well for you. However, I want to introduce you to BYU Pathways, and I'm still working on him. This individual lives in Africa. Oh boy, this naked kid is just everywhere.
He's the comic relief. This is good.
Parenting right here. I'll blame it on myself. I'll take ownership on it. So, anyway, so again, we'll see. Maybe I can get this individual out to BYU Pathways. Him and I have connected a good amount, but he's dragging his feet a little bit. And I was like, look, I'll pay, because he lives in Africa, and it'd be so inexpensive for him to get started. Anyway, we'll see how that works. I wanted to share one last quote, and we'll kind of tie up this podcast on that. And it's a quote that you guys are familiar with. And I think the quote goes something like, a good parent doesn't, let me see if I remember correctly. I said, a good parent prepares their child for the path, not the path for the child.
Yes.
And I know you guys are familiar with that from your work and sharing in different large groups and stuff like that. And I think you guys have done a tremendous job of that, Brad. I know, your time in Boy Scouts of America, you probably were great working with all the kids, and I have no doubt. And then, of course, Sandy, you, a mother of 6 children, and then working the MTC, and then, these last couple of years here in Maryland. And now you guys are doing BYU Pathways. So I think you guys are doing a great job, and appreciate you guys. Any last words for maybe some parents out there that are struggling a little bit with their kids?
I think that just love them and have high expectations with high support for them.
And get outside. Get outside. Get out of the house.
Provide experience.
Go places where these don't work. Otherwise, we're in deep trouble.
Yeah,
in my opinion.
I love those words. I mean, Brad, like I said, you and I are very similar, and it's no surprise that we met at BYU in the major we did. But getting the kids outside, it's so therapeutic. You guys know we've been to the canal with you guys. We love getting over there. Just even a simple walk around the neighborhood, I think, could do a lot of, and you can make that a routine, a ritual, a tradition. It's like, hey, even if it's cold out, we're going to bundle up and we're going to walk around the neighborhood 2 times, or we're going to go to the park.
It's cold out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's raining. Get your boots on.
Yeah. Yeah. Then high support, high expectations.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Yeah. Well, because the expectations let them know that what you think of their potential,
I like that. Yeah. And that makes me think of, you said good missionaries are highly communicative, right? And if you're communicating to your kids that you expect big things out of them, but you're also willing to help them clean their room or clean out the car or with their music lessons or whatever it is, then it's showing you've got a belief in them for sure.
And we're not pretending to be the ultimate wonderful parents. I mean, heaven's sakes, we've made mistakes. And I think because we're old enough, we call this lessons learned. There's things we do differently. If we went back, I wouldn't want to go back. But if we went back to starting off having kids, we would definitely do things differently.
Well, very good. Brad and Sandy, thank you so much. And those that are watching, if you are interested in their book, it's Raising Successful Missionaries by Brad and Sandy Harris. You won't regret it. Love you guys. Appreciate you. And look forward to seeing you guys again soon.
Thank you, Josh.
Thank you, Josh.
Real quick, I want to say thank you for tuning in and also ask for a favor. If you enjoyed the show, I'd ask that you would hit the subscribe button. It helps us scale the guests. It helps us grow the production. And if you really enjoyed it, please consider donating to the show by finding me on Venmo at Josh-Pratt. That's at JOSH-PRATT. I will repay your kind gesture by making sure that this show gets better and better. Thank you so much.